Wow. Yes. Right?
What? Is that a big deal? What a beautiful number.
They are, I saw one, probably 6 or so years ago now. In Thornton, had to pick it up on trail.
You saw.
Yeah, beautiful. We both stopped. And I was actually with my son, he stopped too. It's like. Yeah, he or she, beautiful, but just actually went the other way. It's like. Yeah, amazing.
Fishing game. It's the existence because nobody's got them, nobody's got scat, nobody's got fur. This guy.
Well,
Yeah.
That's cool. That's a cool thing to see. Yeah.
Oh.
Awesome. Mhm. 30.
6:30. Yeah.
Wait 2 minutes, make that count.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. The 20th.
Mhm. 30 to 80. Yeah. Hopefully, this is the last one. This is the last one.
Is this the final one from the committee for this year? Is this?
No.
No.
No, there's still,
Still have.
we have another meeting.
Okay.
After the fire stations about coming in. On October 24th. Which is the next meeting.
Yeah.
There's a kid and she may not. No, thank you, Carol.
I don't think so. Thank you.
Have a good night. Keep looking at them. They're gonna be out in the way.
All right, I'm gonna call the meeting to order. Um, Karina is not with us, but she, we expect her to be joining us. She said maybe a little bit late, but, joining us by Zoom. So we're gonna get going. First thing is the approval of the minutes from our last meeting.
You didn't have anything.
I didn't have anything,
I'm sorry.
all right?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of today's meeting, September 11th, as presented.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
I also have non-public. On September 11th, and I will make a motion to accept the non-public meeting minutes as presented.
I'll second that.
All those in favor? Aye.
I
All right, next on the agenda is the continuation of the public hearing regarding the Lincoln Business Industrial Park as far as modifying the covenants and deed restrictions. Had two hearings or two meetings where this hearing has been available. Again, just to sum it up, we're looking at changing one restriction that so any, that reads, any commercial or light industrial use of these lots or the structures thereupon must be of the type expected to require regular on-site staff supervision and employment. No use primarily intended for storage or other unattended purposes will be allowed. We're looking to get rid of that covenant and replace it with the language, no self-storage unit or units of any kind shall be permitted on the conveyed lot or lots, and no self-storage use shall be permitted on the conveyed lot or lots. And then adding one more covenant that says the town shall have the right to impose different or additional covenants and restrictions in any future conveyance of any of the remaining lots within the subdivision of the Lincoln Industrial Park in the town of Lincoln, New Hampshire, surveyed January 1993, July 2006 by Saborn Surveying, Inc. Provided that any such different or additional covenants and restrictions shall not, without express written agreement, apply to the lots owned by the current lot owners. So this is our third, hearing on this. We were waiting for, an official response from Mr. Sullivan. I know he's aware of these, and he's aware of this meeting tonight as he was the last two times. Is there any other public input on this, Mike? I see that you're online. Did you have any other comments? I know you spoke at the first hearing we had on this.
No, I'm all set, OJ.
All right, thank you, Mike. Any other public comment on changing the covenants?
Did you see the email from? Karina sent from Sullivan.
Sent it to you.
Today, 4:30, it's probably what you can see. Dated today, he just received the email and would like to ask for one more continuance, to the next Board of Selectmen meeting. He was gonna try to get a hold of his attorney this afternoon and come tonight, but wasn't very optimistic that would be able, that would happen. Not exactly why. Oh, Karina sent him
What?
by email and had the.
Oh.
Hey, Paul,
So they don't,
Paul, can you mute yourself, please? She sent him an email and had the wrong email address, so
That's why he didn't get it.
correct.
Yeah, what she had sent him was the covenant potential change and Jason's opinion.
Yeah.
And he did not get it. I did speak to him, told him tonight we were gonna vote on it. He said, I didn't get it. I said, okay, so I said, we honestly.
He has it now,
If
so
the board would approve it, we could give one more continuance on this and come hell up.
I'm fine with that. Yeah, I'm fine with that, considering that he just got.
I'm fine with that. I mean,
And Karina apologized, said something about the wrong.
Okay,
email
it was
address.
Then Mike, would you be okay with a continuance and no changes as is written?
One more meeting.
one more round.
No, that's fine. I understand.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right, then,
I'll make a motion to continue that till the next meeting.
Second,
all those in favor? Aye.
thank you.
All right, next on the agenda is the discussion with Longfellow Construction regarding the Rapids project. So if you guys want to come forward? Are these different than this one? No, we already have it. Okay. Dang, I got two of them.
Town plan is pretty awesome.
Yep.
To get it done.
So this is just in the beginning, so this rapid parcel is the parcel that we have previously was approved for 78 townhouses. It is quite close to where we sit tonight, down the street, and it's a parcel that we realized in our development plans that there may be some better use for, and wanted to start to look at planning it, and this is the initial phases, so we're looking at coming in for a master plan discussion and starting that process. Some of the things that would maintain is keeping the duplexes down near the river. That's also gonna maintain a swimming hole and working with the town to make the best form of an easement to get a walking trail so people can access that swimming hole for the general public. We're looking at doing a recreation center, which is really set up, so you'll see that's where there's sport courts, tennis, pickleball, paddle, as well as different parking areas that would accommodate a hotel and restaurant component. So looking at the proximity to downtown and everything that's happening, we thought this would be a good site to not just have the duplexes, but also look at other amenities that would be not just for this development, but for the neighboring developments as well. There's a lot of things that we're looking at here, and we can kind of get into some questions of what our next steps would be, but we're looking at making sure we're maintaining a lot of open space, hitting a lot of different boxes from what the goals we've understood the goals to be of the town and kind of situations of the different buildings. We'd have underground parking as well as this large parking lot. We have a buffer from the street, and then we have at the main street, which is a separate parcel, but we're just including this more of a welcome center with some restaurant cafe space that will be entering in. So that way people are coming into, whether it's a Salt Lake Resort or the Rapids or, you know, one of the different properties, it would be a great place for people to pull in, ask questions, see what's going on, and not have to ultimately creating traffic and, you know, congestion across the bridge, right, when you come into South Peak. So there'll be a lot of similarities in how we can kind of coordinate and make this feel like a, you know, a softer entry in. Some of the things we're looking to do is not overburden the 2 lots that we own on Main Street. That's actually 2 parcels that was previously subdivided. In that, we would look to take advantage of different, you know, areas like a outdoor ice rink. Working on this plan, we've established different floodplain questions that we're working through right now as far as how the floodplain did change to make sure we're going to be in compliance and what we're proposing. We've also been looking at wetlands and how we'd be siting different buildings as well as the soil conditions, just because it was previously had some disturbance back when the mill was active. As a whole, it would hit a lot of boxes, and there's a lot of good opportunity here, and I think it would be a phased project. So what we're looking to do is, instead of waiting and coming back to the boards, planning board and selectmen in 5 years for the 3 years for the hotel, or 2 years or 4 years, whatever that timing is, we wanted to have a global perspective of what was involved, so we could understand, okay, how much, you know, what is the process for water, sewer, tying it up, you know, all the different utilities, as well as looking at it from a perspective of traffic. What is it ultimately going to be? Our existing permits for the duplexes, a lot of the similarities are there. So we do want to maintain that over near the river, where it's a more a wooded area down near the river. But when it gets closer to Main Street and the entry into South Peak, as well as these other condo complexes, we'd look to make that more of a welcoming area, as well as having the parking, so people are parking, staying at the hotel if they decide to go walk to the village shops, or, you know, going over to Riverwalk or different areas. It would be a conducive place for everybody. So this is just a very, you know, 30,000 feet view of it. We started to do some quick rendering, and you can kind of see that in the second page of different buildings. We're trying to give perspective of what we think some things could look like, and just in theory of what would be there. And overall, we think it's just really trying to take advantage of the natural state of it, you know, outdoor activities, community space, welcome center, and then the hotel restaurants component. And then the duplexes would be kind of somewhat separate based off, you know, just amount of acreage and square footage the lot is.
Do you have any specific questions of us that you're?
Well, we wanted to just introduce the project. I guess one question would be is, when we start to look at putting this together and factoring in what we're gonna need for different allotments, where would the process be about understanding, okay, this is what we have for, you know, putting our name in the hat, if you like, say, okay, well, this is what we want to get accomplished as we're working through this. You know, water, sewer. When we go to do traffic studies, we want to evaluate what that's going to look like. So different things that the board would like to see us do during this planning phase before we come with a formal application.
I think most of that is gonna be driven by the planning board. You know, the 3 of us could sit here and say, we have to do a traffic study, or we could all sit here and say, nah, don't bother. But it's the planning board that I think is gonna really drive some of those.
Yeah, and that's, we've already talked to them, and they've been very helpful,
Yeah,
but we also wanted to make sure that part of the process was coming to both boards and
right.
introducing the project.
I think what you're gonna be dealing with us is this is one of the vested projects on the town's water and sewer list, okay, as you know. It's vested for the water and sewer demand of the project that was approved. You know this, I'm kind of just stating this in public, just so everybody
Yes.
knows who might be watching this. So that when you go back, if your water demand or sewer demand is higher because of the hotel than the duplexes that it's replacing, if it is, I'm just saying if it is, this is who you're gonna need to deal with for those water and sewer rights.
Yes, and I think that's why, one of the main reasons why we're here tonight was in conjunction with introducing the project. And again, I'm John Warzoka from Horizons Engineering, the engineering firm doing work for Mark. So the question is exactly that, is that, so right now, there is a certain vesting for water and sewer on the Rapids project through that approved planning board. You know, the project was approved through the planning board. So it has site plan approval. So now moving forward, I think the project is going to be looking for, and what the planning board has provided some guidance on, is that they'd like to issue a revised or some formal site plan approval for the first phase and a master plan kind of approval for the remainder of the project as is contemplated by the ordinance, which the town's ordinance allows for master plan approvals. I think the question is, okay, we recognize that we're gonna need additional water and sewer capacity for the next part of the project. So what does that process look like with the town? And again, I believe that is select board, correct? That kind of works through that process.
For water and sewer.
For
yes.
water and sewer. So I think looking to what the planning board is going to require, they're going to turn around and say, okay, well, you got to go to the select board to talk about water sewer. So we're trying to get ahead of that a little bit and just understand, okay, you know, we understand we've got to do a sewer study to make sure that we've got conveyance, you know, capacity to the plant. We aren't clear right now what the plant capacity is, and the same thing on the water side. While we know we have flows available, we're not sure on what the source capacity is and how we get in line there with all the growth that's going on. I'm sure at some point the town's going to bump up against their capacities. So we're just kind of wanting to get some guidance on, all right, what is that process?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I have the answer. My thought would be that again, what's vested is gonna stay vested as far as gallons per day. When you come in and with the master plan, even though it's not an approved site plan, but if that master plan gets approved, I think that's when this board would be dealing with the granting and vesting of the additional water and sewer capacity.
Yeah, and I think, because what I think Mark is gonna let, I don't want to speak for you, Mark, but I think what really ultimately the goal here, in order to master plan and have something that comes out of that process of value, is that vesting is a critical part of that.
Yeah, we don't wanna wait if it's 5 years from now and so much has happened on Main Street and the town as a whole. We don't wanna wait and say, wow, we would have had a great project, but they built 3 hotels that weren't even in the cards. That we're not even aware of now, right? Like, we wanna look at this and say, wow, this is a great location for one. It's sited in an appropriate manner, it meets the character and the aesthetics that we all wanna see. If that's the case, and we have, you know, the guidelines of what you're gonna wanna see long-term, at least we can get that vested interest. So while we're moving forward with our projects, we're not missing out on that.
What was vested, including, I believe, the units at South Peak of bedroom count? I think we were at somewhere at 68% of capacity, was that what we're told, as far as the sewer went. Obviously, the new water tank will have an impact on availability, you know, pressures, et cetera, et cetera. So I think exactly what OJ is saying, when you're ready to pull the trigger, with some definitive, you can come in and ask, you know, is the capability capacity to put this plan into place?
So basically, you're saying, I'm just making sure I fully understand. So we're gonna come in with a formal saying, here's what we have, here's our calculations. Can we get this vested?
Yeah, and I'm thinking that should occur after the planning board has seen, number one, the change site plan review for at least the duplexes. Is that, you're gonna go for just the duplexes?
Yeah,
as
so
far
what
as
we
site plan?
wanna do is,
And then master plan for the rest.
that's right, so we don't wanna go in for a smaller amount of duplexes and just lose vested interest.
Right.
So we would like to just go in and say, here's our calculations, we'll work with the planning board over the next few months and maybe knowing that we're at the high sixties, knowing we clearly have capacity for the project. We wanted to make sure that we were not gonna get through that whole process and then have it say, oh, you didn't go talk to the select board, you don't have the capacity, so you can't do what you just gotta.
Right, when we went to this vested project list, first come, first served. The procedure was that anything that, once the planning board approved the site plan, it become vested. We never considered a master plan like this that said, okay, here's the, we're gonna master plan this, only get this section approved and then move down the line. I would think that would fall into the same category, but I would actually have to go back and look at exactly how that vesting rights were determined to make sure that we can do that for master plan projects as well as, site plan approved projects.
Yeah, and it's really just because some of the parcels that we own as we continue to develop in town, we know there's only so fast we can go into it in a positive manner. So we want to make sure that as we're looking at it, that, we know that there's projects that we have that are not, including this one here, that we need more workforce housing. With workforce housing, we need more allotment. So we want to start to look at it, saying we might not be able to fill the house, as much as it's already housing needs. So we just want to keep being ahead of things and try to give the transparency to all the boards. Say, here's what we're thinking on the site. We're making an alteration. Here's what we like. Keep everyone in the know.
Actually, as part of approving a master plan, I believe you have to have a developer agreement with the town,
That's right.
because
Yes,
South Peak does, Forest Ridge does.
yes.
That's how South Peak's, water and sewer rights are vested, is through the development agreement, not through site plan review. If you're gonna master plan this, I think you would have to do the developer agreement with us,
That makes
and
sense.
that's where you vest.
That makes sense, because,
That's the-
all right, so that sounds like, again, I think we don't wanna get caught in a catch-22 here either, where the planning board says you've gotta have vesting in order to approve the master plan, and the select board says we can't approve vesting unless you have an approved master plan.
Right.
So if we did, if as part of this master plan process, we also did a developer agreement with town that include the water and sewer, that would take care of that, I guess.
And I would imagine that we would be coming in front of the planning board after we had a development agreement. I would imagine that when we came in and had to call it the hotel, and that was 3 years out, we would then need to be in front of the planning board currently with engineer drawings for draining, everything that was involved, the heights, all the details that are just like in South Peak, where you come in and for different stages. So would we do the development agreement first, or do we go to the planning board first?
I personally have never been on either board, planning board or board of selectmen, to deal with a new developer agreement. Obviously, I've dealt with South Peaks, I've dealt with Forest Ridges after the fact. I don't know which comes first.
And I think
I
that this
think that
is,
should be specified though in the land use plan under master plan developments. There's a requirement to do the developer agreement with the town, and it should specify in there whether that needs to be done before you go to the planning board or after, because I'm not sure.
It seems like looking at what happened in the past, at least from the South Peak perspective, that agreement, the developer agreement was done as, I think, concurrent or shortly after the master plan process. But I don't know at what point did they get the first phase of the site plan approval, which would have been small at that. That kind of vested that, but we're kind of talking about doing the same thing here, where we're talking about a first phase that would be tangible and short term, and then, subsequent phases that would be more longer term master plans. So it seems reasonable that those two, that now we already have approval for that first phase. It's a little bit different. But we could base that developer agreement off of that current approval and expanding it to the master plan. Essentially, if you follow.
and I think that we don't need to have this answer right now, like, this is just, we wanted to get the conversation started. We wanted to, I've already met with the planning board, we're gonna be going back to start getting more details for them. Understanding that we have some questions, we can kind of work through, talk to Karina, come back to the board. But we wanted to start this process so that way we could kind of let everyone know what's coming up, and then also so the town can continue to plan accordingly.
Couple of questions, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
Chip. The parking lot, would that be open to the public, or is that strictly for those that are residing or renting, on site?
It would be, it'd be built for the people that are on site, the hotel, people using the facilities.
Well, you said you're gonna have underground parking.
Yeah, but not the, that'll be part of it, but then there'll be more to it. So there'll be restaurant in the hotel.
Okay,
So that it'll be built for the facilities on site.
All right.
But I don't think it'll be, it's not gonna be a police gated parking lot.
that's where I was going next with it, it's gonna be a gated area.
Right, so like I see with the village shops that, you know, we go there often and see people parking there that maybe or maybe not shopping in the village shops or going to dinner. So it would be similar just to making sure that there's enough parking around to accommodate, like, so if somebody wants to go play pickleball, they're not saying, where are they gonna park? We don't want them parking at the village shops or Riverwalk and walking over here. We want there to be enough parking to accommodate all the amenities and
And going on
restaurants and stuff.
that same thing, the skating rink and the sports courts for use only people staying or living in that area.
Yeah, we're actually looking at potentially opening it up as a club that would be more in keeping with other different developments, or different people could go there if you wanted to just get a day pass, or, you know, so it'd be, if you were staying at the hotel, you'd have free access. If you're not staying at the hotel, it could be something that you would want to use, or,
So,
Um,
so you, just to follow up, so you're not thinking of this as an extension to South Peak, where South Peak residents can use these pickleball courts with these?
I would envision South Peak residents being, that'd be an amenity that they'd want to use them, but it wouldn't be limited to only South Peak residents.
I mean, I assume you'd be charging a fee to join the club, so to speak.
Right, it's really, the idea is, this location is very conducive for the owners of South Peak, but as well as some other condo complexes that we think would be interested in having the ability to use that, whether it's links or others that are really in close proximity.
Somebody had mentioned something like a head shell on the back of the reception center for concerts and things like that.
We like the idea. I mean, that's part of what this whole property, we think that there's a lot of opportunity to do things that would be great space where you're not, there's more flexibility here than we even see when you're looking at the South Peak parcel because of topography and all the ski trails coming in. This has got some nice opportunity for good amenities and things that would be beneficial to the entire community.
Finally, have you started the talks with the neighbors yet, the homeowners association over on Bunker Lane of the single family? I think that's important to have the neighbors aware of what's going on and, you know, even get possibly some suggestions from them.
Yeah, we just recently, Jimmy was working on getting a list together of everybody we're gonna be talking to. We're working on trying to get in front of the different boards and trying to just not just talk about this project, but other projects that are all going on and trying to find a good way of communicating.
Thank you.
I guess I see based on what you're saying, the master plan and the actual subdivision for the duplexes probably would be coming before the planning board simultaneously.
Yes, it'd be basically a modification, it'd be wrapping a modification of that duplex site plan into a new umbrella approval that includes site plan for that part of it, master plan for the rest. Yeah, and that's forthcoming. We don't know the timing yet, but it's coming. And at that point, you know, we kind of, you know, the water sewer allocation was already hashed out for the duplex part of this, so we need to do, you know, already had some preliminary discussions with, you know, with the water sewer department about, particularly on the sewer side, what we need to look at to make sure that there's enough conveyance capacity, you know, in the main to get down there. I know there's some questions about that.
Yeah.
So we can look at that as part of this, which would be wrapped into whatever that developer agreement is, if any upgrades are necessary. But then it's helpful knowing that you're at 68%, that there's some room left in that allocation. To play with here. I think it's just important for us to figure out what vehicle it would be to get that vesting, so Mark has this all set to go, so when he decides to build in 5 years or whatever, it's there.
And just a couple things, the 68%, I believe, is based on, it is an in theory, if all of these vested projects were built. So today it's not 68%.
Oh, okay, so even better, yeah.
Okay?
yeah.
It's, and again, that's on a per gallon per day, per unit bedroom.
Which is not real, usually the flows are much lower than the
That's
design flows,
what
and
I
that's a
understand.
frustration that we all have on a daily basis in my world. That the book flow numbers that the state requires we use are
Right.
very, very, very conservative. But on the flip side of that, when your plan is starting to bump up against 80% of your capacity is when the state requires that you
That was my second.
you start planning.
Is
Yeah,
don't, 100%.
no, you don't get to 100%, you gotta start at 80.
80%, it comes under the state trigger.
Yes, yes.
I knew you knew that, but I just wanted to state it in public.
Yeah.
So, but along with the site plan review and the master plan, that's when I'd start with the developer agreement, start talking. And again, this board makes the decision on that, but a lot of that input is gonna come from, Nate or Ron, or, some of these other issues that need to be dealt with in a developer agreement. So I would, advise you to start on those conversations, to see what they're gonna wanna see in a developer agreement for a master plan like this.
Excellent, that's helpful, yeah.
Anything else?
No, overall, do you like the thought of the project? Is there any feedback you have besides the process?
I don't have any comment, and again, that I sit on the planning board. It would be inappropriate for me to say I love this or I hate this, or, at this point, when you come to the planning board, I'm gonna be much more of a planning board hat wearer. Very good to speak, but, this fits in with what you're doing, and, I don't see any objection as a selectman to the water, the sewer, those types of issues. So, any other
Please don't ask me.
comment?
On paper, it looks good.
Yeah,
Thank you, this has been really helpful, I think it gives us some direction.
Tim has a question.
I'd just like to say something about this. I mean, I was born in North Woodstock 75 years ago. I lived in Lincoln 55 years. We put up a bunch of money. We need a new pollution plant. We need some more water. As far as the Main Street traffic, to eliminate it, to come off the interstate, right through the lights, build a bridge, get the traffic on the other side of the river. They willing to do all that to be able to make a ton of money.
The state's
and
already said.
Leave this town 10 years, 15 years from now, like Saturday did, and leave me with the taxes.
The planning board looks at all of these issues when it comes before the planning board. Including traffic, including water, including sewer. No single developer is gonna be responsible for adding, increasing or changing the sewer treatment plant, let's say. We've been collecting.
The town ought to be getting money from all these developers.
We are.
We have been for a lot of years.
Because those are the goings aren't gonna last forever. You're gonna have to put a modern pollution plan in, which you're looking at $25,000-$30,000.
Million.
No,
Million.
millions.
Millions.
Okay.
Jim,
Where's this out?
with your question, people started complaining when they said we need a new police station because of the fact that we're growing and this is antiquated. Absolutely it is. But you know something? It's not costing you a dime, not costing me a dime. That hotel, Riverwalk, and Hampton Inn there, between their annual taxes, paying the bond note on that, not costing us a dime. So we are reaping the benefit. And when you look at some of the issues that are addressed by bringing in positions that need jobs, our locals have employment opportunities to get involved. I mean, housing has been a big issue.
Why does my tax bill keep going up every single year?
We have the lowest tax rate in the
Yes, I
state of
realize
New
that.
Hampshire for
I
any
realize.
town that provides water and sewer. And we're the only ones that don't charge for it. So, I mean, I'm sorry, but there isn't a Lincoln resident who can complain about the taxes. We have the lowest ones in the state with water and sewer. We don't pay for water and sewer. We don't charge anything for it. So it's, I mean, the whole tax rate thing. However, I do see the other, what everything else you're saying, and I can't say I disagree. I think this is beautiful, and it's gonna be great when it's built. Hopefully you'll be able to find someone that can work in your hotel and your restaurant. Cause nobody can afford to live in town anymore because of this. And several of these everywhere. So that's where I stand. It's gorgeous. It'll be beautiful. You do great work. You'll do good things.
His
But you don't
company
have-
also provides a lot of employee housing.
And I've noticed that as well. I will give
And
you
that's
kudos on
also-
that. I
Well, that's
just,
what we
it's
wanna
the
do
whole-
more of too, and that's what we wanna make sure that we're nervous that, let's fast forward, right? In 10 years, if this is all built out, we know there's a problem with employee housing and affordable housing. So we wanna make sure we're looking ahead at that. So we're looking at more parcels, and we bought a lot of things that
I've noticed that.
that have nothing to do with these developments, but only have to do with putting people in homes that can work and live in the community. And we want to continue to do that.
And I've noticed, and you're right, and thank you for doing something. There's not enough of that going around, so I applaud you for taking that step.
All right, if there's nothing else?
Oh, Paul's got his hand up.
You wanna, oh, I see it now. I can't see it on this screen.
Yeah, I see that, yeah.
Paul?
Hi, OJ. Hey, look, I would just advise them to look in the land use plan ordinance under plan phase development. Under plan phase development and the land use plan ordinance, it gives the guidance for what they're looking to do. And it walks you right down through it. It walks down through the master plan, it walks down through the developer agreement. I don't know what district that's in, that portion of that development. But most generally, the planning board would have to meet to, because it says in there that a plan phase development is not a permanent use, but may be approved as a conditional use by the planning board. So depending upon what zone it's in, that can happen. But just they want to look at something to help them along. I think that would, if it's going to be a plan phase development, that's when you need your master plan and your developer agreement.
Section F,
Thank you.
that's what I was reading through too.
All right,
Thank you. Have a good night.
thank you.
Thank you.
See you at the planning board meetings.
Included the conditional use, yeah, I was reading the same thing. Oh,
All right, next on the agenda is the MS1 summary inventory evaluation. We've all signed this. Doesn't need a vote, it's just a compilation of numbers, but it is interesting. The net valuation in the town, non-utilities is, for 2023 is 1,263,856,664. The utilities is $11,395,400. So the non-utilities part of that assessment went up, the utilities went down, and that's not because they took down and we lost any utilities, it's because of the legal agreement that was reached as part of the assessment law, suitable assessment, appeal that the utilities made with the, this town and 50-ish other towns, so, there's really nothing, that wasn't a surprise, and there's nothing we can do, that's kind of the new value of the utilities.
Wasn't the fact that it went up $17 million overall.
That sounds right, I'm not sure what the total, the exact number. Yeah, it went up, but the residential and commercial went way up, but we lost. Was it? What it was, it was over 10 million that we lost in utilities, I don't know what that number is. All right, that takes care of that. All right. Next on the agenda is the town manager's report. The town manager has notified us that she will not be able to join tonight. She has a family issue she's dealing with. I will, just for the record, read her report,
Okay.
but I don't have any of the details on it. Yes, I do. All right. The Riverfront Park update, Ray, Ray Corber and Tim Andrews from Novus were scheduled this month to start work on the EPA brownfields cleanup funding application that is due in November. That effort was pending the New Hampshire DES review of the findings and recommendations for the work to be completed to date and providing input on a remedial action plan. Unfortunately, DES cannot provide us input necessary to proceed with the remedial action plan in time to submit the EPA brownfields cleanup grant application. The timeline we are now looking at is as follows. Obtain New Hampshire DES concurrence on the recommended approach and to address on-site contamination. Once there is a high level of assurance, DES will support a viable plan of action. Prepare the remedial action plan for their review and approval. Seek New Hampshire DES funding for the preparation of the remedial action plan. Pending funding, prepare the remedial action plan for submittal this winter for DES approval in spring of 2024. Submit an application to New Hampshire DES for grant funding to clean up the wetlands area. Pending funding, initiate the cleanup of the wetlands area in the summer, fall of 2024. Prepare and submit the EPA brownfields cleanup funding application in fall of 2024. So where we were hoping to get the DES approval this year, that's looking like they're not even gonna look at it till next year. And I think we've agreed, and I'm open if someone wants to make any changes, but to not funding this with town money, but sitting and waiting for the DES to, first of all, approve this and then provide some funding for the planning stage, and then waiting for EPA to provide funding for the cleanup stage.
Agreed.
Yeah, so again, it's not costing the taxpayer.
Right.
Right.
I don't want to give up on it.
No,
Even
No,
if it takes
but we'll
another
wait.
year or two.
We'll
whatever.
wait.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I agree.
We received the results of the New Hampshire Retirement System payroll audit. Fortunately, there were no corrections needed regarding payroll deductions or payment to NHRS. However, several corrections with regard to how the funds were allocated in the reporting system, that is base pay versus comp over base, will need to be made.
It was a lot too that had to be done. I popped in one day and she was telling me about it, that it was, if there was I'm gonna use the PD for an example, because they have the duties that, that was, 8 hours of base pay. And then, but they worked for 10 hours, so then there was 2 hours of overtime. It was just paid for that day out of the account, if you will. But it needed to, the base pay come out of this one, and then the overtime be documented and come out of a separate, be paid through in a separate account, as well as any holiday pay all separately. Yeah, so instead of just paying somebody for the day out of, in this column, it had to be in 3 different columns. So she's having to rework the entire system to accommodate that accounting.
So going forward, that's being done.
She's doing it herself, yeah.
Uh,
Karina's creating that spreadsheet that with, with the retirement systems instructions on how it has to be done and how to create that accounting system. She's doing it, but she's having to transfer, and they wanted to go all the way back to 2012. So I think that she's going back through to 2017, transferring all that stuff over. But yeah, yeah, it's hours and hours and hours of tedious. Yeah. Yeah, so
All right.
thank you, Karina, for doing that.
Yeah. Dubois and King were here, the engineering firm were here on site this morning conducting the structural analysis of the current fire station. So that's good that that project has started. Karina submitted the surplus land disposal application along with the $500 administrative fee to the state for the triangular piece of land abutting the new police department lot that runs up against Interstate 93. So that's moving forward. The 2024 budget worksheets were distributed to department heads last week. And then Karina's asked that they schedule a time to review with Becky, the finance director, and Karina by October 27th. So department heads are working on their budgets for next year. At the last meeting, the purpose and benefits of the new tank were questioned, so I wanted to articulate the purpose and impact the new tank will have on the town's water system. In September 2020, a water storage deficit was identified for the Lincoln water system. Storage deficit was determined based on the American Water Works Association Manual M32 and the required equalization, fire, and emergency storage requirements. The proposed tank would allow the town to address a storage deficiency within the Luton Village system, potentially abandon the existing pump station serving the South Peak high pressure zone, and supplement the main pressure zones with the existing infrastructure modifications. That's it for new stuff. There's a whole email from the Novus who did the who's working on that application. Yes, that's really the long version of
Yeah,
what
take
Karina
that.
summaries. I don't need to read that.
No, I agree.
So that's the town manager's report. As far as other things, two things are on my list and just to bring up is one is to look at the town is holding two bonds on the roads up at Forest Ridge. One is a small bond on the roads within the Pines development. The second is a much larger bond for the roads throughout Forest Ridge that the developer used those homeowner association roads to get trucks and equipment in to build the Pines area. I'm not sure if any building is going on at the Pines or if there will be. But we need as a town to look at what triggers that, those roads to be fixed up. And I'm gonna just ask Karina if she could look into that.
Was that Jefferson Hall? The person that's the
Yeah, right, they're the bond,
bond
yeah,
issue of
holder,
responsibility.
right. They're the ones who issued the bond to the town through a third party.
That should be specified in the bond.
Doing this off the top of my head, I think the inroad within the Pines one was like 10,000. And the Forest Ridge portion was 100,000. And those bonds were set multiple years ago when that was the sort of estimate of doing the roads throughout Forest Ridge, or at least not all the roads, just the main road this developer used to get up into the pines. I'm not sure if that's a valid quote anymore, but that's what the bond is for.
And should that be specified in the bonds? What triggers the release?
Yeah, in the, conditions of approval
Mhm.
that required the bonds, and then within the bond itself.
Right.
Between those two, those conditions of what triggers that,
And you just wanna know what those are.
I wanna know what those are. Because if, you know, if they say we're not done, okay, but if you're not building either, you can never be done.
Right.
So something's gotta trigger the release of those bonds, or for the developer to do it themselves. So I just wanna find out, just asking that question. And then my second question has to do with the lawsuit that I was gonna discuss it non-public, but.
Yeah.
I'll to talk to. Did you have anything you wanted to bring up?
Yeah, I guess this either comes from me or from public. I received a call from Al Poolin, voicemail. And he asked me, first of all, to convey his thanks to Nate Hadaway for the job. Like, he did some repairs on Holland Road. Timely, good to solve the problem. So Nate does great work, as we know. He also, and I think Ron Beard, you still on the,
Yes, sir.
hey, Ron, Al Poolin brought up something that is in your bailiwick. He suggested a piece of apparatus being put up on the Kank, given Columbus Day weekend and the traffic, and you know as well as I do, it can take a couple hours to get up and down the Kank. Is that feasible?
Well, I could look into it,
All right.
but as you,
That's
but
all.
as you know, we're a call department, so
Yep.
a lot of people have primary jobs that pay their bills.
Gotcha. All right.
Yeah, I'd think carefully about that, because if there's a major fire in town, I'm not sure what piece of apparatus we'd want.
Yeah, they're not
stuck
gonna
up
get anything
on
down
the
the hill. Exactly.
I think it's easier to go out the Kank
Up than it is to come
than
down.
come back, because that's where you're gonna hit the traffic.
All right. Thank you for looking into that, Ron. And finally, Mr. Poolin, you know, he's a resident on Pollard Road. He mentioned about inspections for short-term rentals and long-term rentals. And I know that at one point you did some inspections personally, Ron, when issues were brought to our attention. Maybe life safety issues such as, you know, no second means of egress, people being housed in attics, people being housed in basements that had no second means of egress. I don't know if we actually do, are legally eligible to check, like for smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors, etc.
Yeah, obviously our scope is very limited when it comes to short-term rental properties. We have tried, and you know, a couple of times there's been resistance. Obviously, we can't trespass, so we need, you know, approval to gain access to do those approvals. But as the state upgrades the codes and what the scope is that we can look for, we'll definitely address it.
All right, thank you.
So,
I just wanted to comment that last week we had the meeting at the Kank, was it the 20th, I believe it was, about, programming and infrastructure, but longevity of the Kank. It was like 40 something people in the room. It was fantastic. It was a great meeting. Lots of, ideas, thoughts, you know, concerns and kudos as well. And the next one is Thursday, October 5th at 6:30. And it's also available via Zoom, but yeah, it was just fantastic. So
was that meeting available by Zoom?
it was recorded. Yep. It was a Zoom meeting. There were a couple people on Zoom listening in. And you can, if you go to the lincolnnh.org website under meeting, recordings of meetings or whatever, it's on there under Kank rec input session.
Were the people on Zoom able to participate in the meeting?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Because I know no one did. I was,
Nobody did.
but
You're right.
I wasn't even aware.
I think so. Cheryl had the computer in front of her. Oh no, Karina had her computer in front of her,
Oh.
assuming.
Okay.
So
okay.
Karina
So
was
she-
right there and could have, if somebody had raised a hand, I'm sure that she would have listened to them.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, no, it is available on Zoom for those that couldn't make it. It is also recorded for those that weren't able to go, so that you can listen and watch and see and whatnot.
You know, when we, you
No, keep going.
when we met with the Woodstock board and talked about this procedure, you know, opening up conversation, at least my thought was that we'd be looking at the capital improvements, because what started this whole, the thing was the idea of putting a deck out that
Right,
looks up
right,
the
right,
street,
right.
which sounds like a great idea, but we didn't want to do something that
Would have to be torn down in 2 years when we did, yeah.
or it's, you know,
Right.
maybe we wouldn't tear it down, but say, oh, we wanted to do this, now we
Right,
can't.
right,
we gotta
right,
do
yeah.
it
Nope.
Differently. So this meeting kind of went beyond that scope,
Mhm.
and not only talking about the building, but other infrastructure and, procedures, programming, ideas like that
Mhm.
were outside of the scope of just building or the infrastructure. But I thought it was all good input, all good ideas. You know, some great short-term things, some great long-term things. So I'm kind of
It-
excited.
One of the things that it showed me because I kind of knew, but it brought it to the front that I hadn't really considered was, 10 years ago even, we were only doing 3 to 5 after school. And I was working them and then I'd lock up and go home. And then we'd have night skiing 2 nights a week. And then we brought in this, Mr. Lux, I bring in the ski teams and whatnot, a little more afterwards. And now, I mean, it's even after school it's not just 3 to 5 anymore. It's 3 to like 8 and then, or to 7, and then they're skiing from 7 to 9, 3 nights a week, so there's so much more going on there now. And room for more if we find, I loved I think it was Vicky had the idea of what about it, like an after-school program in the winter at the camp. What a great idea. I love that idea, because there's so many kids that would take advantage of that. And then today, the after-school program was Tara and Brianna. Only. That's all they had for staff today. After, there was 2 more that could join them afterwards, but was the 2 of them to walk all those kids over. So, I mean, there are so many things and great ideas and needing the employees to establish them. Yeah, exactly. Which is everybody in the whole world right now is understaffed. I don't care who you are, there's not enough staff around. But anyway, that was just something I was thinking about. Great idea. And I wish we had, dozen extra people to work on.
Well, I think jointly we can address the immediate needs.
Oh, yeah.
At least, I mean, there was big cry for a second bathroom, obviously, and it's needed.
Or just bigger,
You know,
more, yeah.
And even changing the entrance way. I mean, there's another thing.
And more space.
Without, going crazy with money. I
Right.
mean, originally we had heard somebody was looking for $2 million. That ain't gonna happen.
No, nobody was looking for $2 million. That was the worst case scenario. Somebody said, if we have to replace that building, what's it gonna cost? So the square footage was mapped out, how many square feet are there, and then went online, and today's commercial building prices times the square footage came to just barely under $2 million. So nobody wanted it, nobody asked for it. They wanted to know what the worst case scenario could be. That's where that number came from.
CIP.
Yes, but that was what was asked of her, to find out what that would cost and,
To replace it.
right. Not that we need to replace it, but it definitely needs some work. It needs to be reconfigured, it needs to be enlarged, not doubled, but there needs to be more space. We need more bathrooms. And, we need to take care of the rebar sticking out of the floor before somebody gets impaled on it. Things like that have to be addressed. But yeah, I loved it, was a great meeting. And I loved a lot of, and I'll quote, low hanging fruit. that can be addressed almost immediately, or at least looked at, yeah, which, you know, I think it was a fantastic meeting. I was very,
The question was asked, if you remember too, about the money that we had put in the CIP for the outdoor structure, the
Mhm.
covered structure, I think. There's gonna be 45,000 at the end of December, and then another 40.
30, I think, went in. I think it'll be 75 at the end of 2024. Yeah. If I remember correctly.
45 is the estimated balance at the end of this year.
Yeah.
And another 30 is being recommended to put in, so that'll be 75.
75. Yeah, so I'm only $100,000 short.
Well, the total estimated cost is 120, so it's 60.
Yeah, that total estimated cost, we've been trying to get this thing built for a good 8 years. 8 years ago it was 120, so double
Okay.
that.
See,
Well,
we actually put in 4. I did 30s crossed out there, 40 down. below.
all right,
So
I have-
it's-
I don't have the most
it's
recent
not-
We have
it
30,
does- Yeah,
Okay.
it does,
well, that's still
yeah,
a good amount.
that's
Mhm.
a start, a good start. Because the total cost for that structure, I think, was $120,000. Get 2/3 of the money.
Right, we good?
no, I had, we have an email that came in from Delia Sullivan.
Oh,
I
yes.
just wanted to, I don't wanna forget that. I did, reply to her that we would discuss it.
I did.
Um, Yeah, I'm just gonna read it real quick.
Sure.
Right there, here we go. Dear Board of Selectmen, now that there are no tenants at the old Lincoln Motel on Main Street, right across the street here, there are at least 3 stray cats roaming the neighborhood. I believe some tenants there used to feed at least 5 strays out in back of the hotel all year long. They are prowling for food, and I wonder if there is someone you can contact to attract them back to that same spot and send them to a shelter or something. Just wanted to bring it to your attention, to have them taken care of. There will just be more if action is not taken. I'm sure they are not spayed. Couple of things. Cause I spoke to, the officers downstairs and I called the Humane Society and I've looked everywhere online. We don't have any cat laws, none. We as a town could, do a cat ordinance. However, in 2019, when we redid the dog ordinance, the animal control ordinance, we were advised by our attorney at the time to not do it, that it is a time bomb. And, so we didn't, at the advice of town council. I mean, we can pay an attorney and get more advice, try it again, but in 2019, we were told not to, don't go there with cats, because there aren't any cat laws. Even if we did have an ordinance, there's no state law to back it up. I did have been paying attention and picked up my cat the other day. It was running, just walking around back there, literally behind the, I was like, open the door. I'm like, Minnie, get in, what are you doing? With my own cat from Pleasant Street, walking around up there. And I did see 2 strays, both of them had notches in their ears. So both of them have been spayed or neutered, because that's what they do. That's, my cat was a stray born in somebody's garage and I trapped the mother and took her to the vet and they spayed her and notched her ear. And said, I don't remember, right ear is female, left ear is male, or vice versa, I don't. One of them, but there are 2 cats, both have notched ears, and that's all I saw was 2. And there's nothing that our animal control officer can do, because there's no laws on cats.
Well, when you say nothing they can do, I mean, because there's no ownership of the cats.
Well, we don't know that.
No, well,
Well,
nobody's.
mine was over there the other day.
He brought it up that too. But I mean, could we ask the animal control officer to attempt to trap them and take them to the Humane Society or one of the shelters? I
No.
just saw on the news that there was a shelter, I think they took like 35 cats out of a woman's home. And, you know, they were looking for homes for those. So, I mean, could we do that? And, you know, because you don't want to exacerbate the problem if some of them aren't
Right.
spayed. Again, I don't know, you know, whether those two that you saw, Tammy, were the only ones there.
I have no
She
idea.
said maybe 5 at one
She
point
said,
in time.
she said she saw at least 3 and she thinks there was 5. Yeah, I only saw 2.
Yeah,
Um,
so I
and
mean,
they both
you know,
had notched ears.
should we at least have a plan? I mean, should we, say that?
When I asked that question to the, Humane Society and said, well, should we trap them, bring them? And the answer was, you can't expend municipal resources on that because we don't have a cat ordinance.
But if it's a nuisance.
And I've looked everywhere for a law that says that we can, because enabling legislation in New Hampshire, there's nothing. There's nothing anywhere that says we can, can't, should, shouldn't, nothing. Not a thing. There are no New Hampshire cat laws, other than you may not sell a cat if it's less than 8 weeks old. Or buy one. Purchase or sell a cat or dog or ferret, there was a bunch of other ones, less than 8 weeks old. That's the
But-
only law.
If it's presenting either a nuisance or a health issue, because if they are not being treated, it's gonna be a health issue. Some little kid goes to pat them and he or she or they get, some problem. I mean, it seems that we can do something rather than sit back and not do anything.
I don't think it's an issue now, I think it's a concern. And I do know that there is another resident that was feeding cats in that area, stray cats. So. And there's a Woodstock resident that comes over to feed cats in Lincoln, in a different area. Yes. So, I mean, I am sympathetic, I love animals, so I'm sympathetic to it, however, there's not a whole lot that the town of Lincoln can do. If, rabid animals, cat, dog, ferret, rabbit, doesn't matter what it is, we are compelled to destroy the animal. But
Rapid.
if it's rabid,
Right.
that's the only, doesn't matter what the animal is. But there's just, I've looked everywhere, there are just no laws for cats, other than you can't buy or sell one less than 8 weeks old. Dogs, lots of dog laws. Not cats. I do, want to thank Delia though for pointing that out. I like when people take notice of issues with animals and try to do better. Fortunately, there's not much we can do.
Do you have anything else?
I didn't. I do want to say though, that if I'm gonna keep looking, and if I do see one that's not notched, that doesn't have the notch in its ear, which I haven't yet, that I have no problem trapping that animal, taking it, having it spayed or neutered on my own dime. I've done it before. I'll do it again. Absolutely. I still see my cat's mother running around my neighborhood once in a while. Yeah, with her notched ear. That's been 5 years now. She's still around.
All right, I'll open up for public participation if anybody wants to address the board. Jim?
Yeah, I see the roads of mine repaving
Yes.
in front of Tammy to Timmy's. They're only repaving half of that road.
Correct. They're only doing that bad spot.
The other side is
south
just as bad in the wintertime. In the wintertime, you have to go into the other lane because
The pavement's not all broken up on the other side though, just on closer to the house side, right? Oh, the dip in it.
that's where it's all, yeah. You
Gotcha.
got a office,
Goes around it. I gotcha.
but on the other side,
Okay.
actually where they're starting, when they got the line where they're starting,
Yep, yep.
that winds up being a hole so deep. My plow truck will go into the other lane
Gotcha.
and down in front of. Priscilla's second driveway, almost. to the
Oh,
stop
yeah,
sign.
yep.
There's another big dip there.
Okay, I will,
Are they just
no,
grinding?
no, I'll make a phone call in the morning. They're gonna grind and fill that, yeah.
They just grinding?
Yeah.
Yeah, those two spots, there's some reason why it sags like that in the wintertime. It's gotta be something under the ground.
Okay, I will make a phone call in the morning. Thank you.
Tim,
Yes.
where are we with the bench? Or-
We have it, and I don't think it's been put together yet. It's on the list of priorities with a short-staffed crew that Nate has. It's down here, but we do have the bench, he knows where it's gonna go. They're gonna sink a post and chain it to the post so that it can be removed in the winter, so it's out of the way. It's gonna be on that East Spur Road. It's, yes.
No, just.
I say,
Once he's got 5 minutes,
I say, at this point,
right,
it's gonna be
right,
taken up before.
right. So if I had to guess, that's
Do
gonna
it
be
next
pushed to spring, yeah, yeah. However, there is a fantastic bench on Paula Road.
I saw that.
Yes.
It is.
Yeah.
Wayne?
Just one comment, there seems to be a lot of changes going on in Forest Bridge. You folks have discussed that in your meetings, you know, a little bit about what's happening up there. I'm just wondering, would it be helpful to you to have somebody from the Master Association come to one of these meetings and just talk about what the changes are that are taking place there? Just a suggestion.
A lot of what's happening up there is more in the planning board's purview. At least that's my understanding, is that they're looking at, well, a potential new owner is looking at doing some developing up there. With the allotment of units that are still left to be built.
There are a number of rumors about lawsuits that are in process, about who's responsible for the roads. When the trucks get finished tearing them up, who's gonna repave the roads? And questions come up. I've talked with people that are just the managers and so forth at the fitness center in the community. And they seem to feel that somebody in the Master Association would be willing to come and talk to you about that. Or the planning board, whatever it would be. I just throw that out as a, if you got questions, maybe they could answer. That's all.
I'm a little bit hesitant. Obviously, anybody can come in and speak to the board during public comment. I'm a little bit hesitant to invite. There may be some lawsuits going on up there in the future. The town, other than our overseeing of that bond, really has nothing to do with them. And, you know, that bond, the town's job with that is to execute it per the instructions or the conditions of the bond. You know, if we can show that the conditions have been met that trigger the bond to be used or the roads to be paved, that's really our only job up there at this point. I don't want to get the town involved in a lawsuit that we're not a party to.
Good way, yeah, good way to skirt around that.
Well, I mean, that's, again, anyone can come in and talk to us, but
Thanks, Jim, thanks, Deb.
yep, good night.
Good night.
Paul, did you hand up?
You're
Yeah.
muted. Oh, there you go.
No, I'm not, can you hear me now?
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Let me lower my hand here. I'd like to address my comments to Mr. Daly. As a taxpayer, I gotta tell you, I'm sick and tired of you talking about how the taxpayers aren't paying a dime for the police department because of
Not
the
what I said,
increase.
Paul, if you're gonna talk, that's not what I said. I didn't say that they're paying it down for the police department.
You said it's not, you said it's not costing the taxpayers anything for the building of the public safety service building because of the Riverwalk and other places. And I can tell you that if those places, Jack, if those places weren't being, if the town wasn't doing that construction and those places were being built, it would be lowering the taxpayers' tax dollars. So, I mean, you know, to relate it like that, you could use the same thing as the cleanup at the riverfront and or the $2 million that no one wants to talk about building at the Cank or whatever it's going to be, and say, oh, all we need is another hotel and it won't cost us anything. Well, taxes are about spending, and if you don't spend it, then you don't need to raise the money, and then it reduces the taxes. So you know you got to take a look at it's costing people one way or the other. when you do a project like that. Whether you're for it or against it, doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is, it is costing you. Because if you didn't do it, you wouldn't be raising the tax money. And the tax money that you've got coming in from bigger projects like the Riverwalk or stuff would go to reduce the tax base. Not, what you're saying is not true, Jack.
Well, I think it is true, Paul, from my perspective. We're looking at it, you're calling it an apple, I'm calling it an orange.
No, what you're doing is
If you put a cruiser
you're
on.
doing it as
put
an
a new
out-of-state
cruiser
person,
in,
Jack.
That's part of the cost, okay? That's an expense. If you buy a new backhoe for that's included in the taxes. I'm saying that the bond that we're floating for the new fire station is not increasing the person's taxes in this town, because the bond is being paid for by the taxes coming from Riverwalk and the Hampton Inn.
You're missing the whole thing. First of all, it's not a fire station, it's a public services building. And second of all, the amount of money the bond is being paid by taxation. And if there wasn't a new public safety services building, all of that money that would be coming in from the Riverwalk or whatever development would go to reduce the tax base in the town of Lincoln, Jack. So take a look at that.
I agree. Any expenditure that we didn't expend money on would reduce the taxpayer, whether it's, school races, or whether it's a piece of equipment for the recycling plant. If you didn't.
That's
spend it,
right.
It's gonna lower the taxes. But
That's
Paul,
right.
when you find a need, just like, you've got a home that's gonna need a new roof. You could put that money in your pocket, or you could pay for the new roof. You're gonna pay for the new roof, so you don't have problems down the
And it's
road.
gonna, and if I pay for the new roof, it's gonna take money out of my pocket. If I don't pay for the new roof, Jack, it's gonna put money in my pocket. So, you gotta take a look at it like that. And I'm sick and tired of you sitting there.
Okay,
Doing
I'm gonna end this conversation.
Yeah, go ahead, OJ, that's fine.
Okay, anything else?
No, I'm just tired of it, that's all.
All right, we have nothing, I have nothing in the non-public about the
I
only
wanted to do the non-public personnel.
personnel.
Yeah.
Okay, is that a motion?
I'll make a motion to go into
Thank you,
non-public
Dave.
personnel.
Good night, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
See you, Wayne. You wanna make a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right,
I'm gonna ask Ron to stay on too, if you don't mind.
Ron, did you hear that? Stay on?
I did.